Hi, Joseph said there was a question on Caseline, so I'm going to try to do something very quick to give you a real fast explanation, and you'll find that information will carry over to using other items. Caseline goes under the wrapping category in the inventory module. If you can use either of the two that are already in there by default and modify them, or you can click on New on the upper left-hand corner and add your own item. When you add Caseline, your thickness will be 0. Okay, your width is going to be in millimeters. Your length is in meters. Okay, you can choose to add your waste, wrapping prep, and install time. And then the next thing you need to choose is how do you track that item. Tracking is the same thing as purchasing. This is a big change in this program because the idea of a tracking level is to simply make it easier for you to modify your costs and your waste for that item by how you actually purchased it versus the calculation that CratePro will use or the unit of measure that CratePro uses internally. You need to select a tracking level. Once you've selected it, you will not change this. In this example, we've selected the unit of measure as roll. It could be a carton, it could be a pallet, it could be whatever it is. You can put it anywhere on B, C, D, E, or F. It doesn't matter, but your unit of measure is always going to be 1 when it is the tracking level. This is very important. Make sure that unit of measure is based as a 1 if whatever the tracking level is. That way, when you come up here, your cost per whatever that unit of measure is going to be easily calculated and your weight is easily calculated. In the case of Caseline, the unit of measure on level A, which is what CratePro uses, this right here should not be modifiable. And this is per meter. Okay? You shouldn't be able to change it. If you can change it, that is an error. You should not be able to change the unit of measure in level A for anything in CratePro in your build, but if you do, that is potentially an error. It should be locked down. But once you've entered your width and your length up at the top, if you hover here, it should auto-calculate the time, and what it should also do is tell you, okay, if a roll is 1, and looking at the width in millimeters and the length, it's going to tell you how many meters make up a roll, and that calculation should be correct. You can click in here and override it if it is wrong. However, if you do find that doesn't calculate correctly, please let us know because we need to look at that. That auto calculation should be good to go. All right. So remember, the unit of measure for Caseline is per meter, right? Even though my tracking level is per roll. Once you've added it, if we go to a design, okay, now we're going to add it to the packing tab, and Caseline is in wrapping. So we select our Caseline. Anything that's in the wrapping tab is generally going to show up. Okay, so select whatever the Caseline is, whether it's an old one or one you've added. Determine if it's stitching or gluing. These each will add a certain amount of time. Okay, so you can look in preferences, and there is time associated with gluing. There's time associated with stitching. If you choose stitching, make sure you do select a material or fastener. In the Inventory Fastener tab, one of the options is to determine if you are going to select, if a fastener can be used as basically your stitching material. So if there's more than just what you're looking at right now, Caseline is an option. So any type of fastener you might attach Caseline with, don't forget to check the Caseline tab or it's not going to show up. If you choose gluing, for example, then down here, anything that's in the coding tab is going to show up here. So if you've got a coding, even though it may not apply to Caseline, codings will all appear here. Okay? And then you can change it if need be, but you can also set your default in preferences. Now you must select to apply it to the cap panels. This is not just the top. The cap is the top, ends, and side panels. Okay? The base is, of course, the base. If you're applying it to the entire interior of the crate, you select both. If you don't select either, then you'll have Caseline show up on your details or material list with everything 0. And that's, of course, not what you want, and it can be very confusing. But select whichever one applies, or if both, select them both. Before you go to prices, okay, you may want to lock and unlock because some changes do require the action of locking and unlocking a design. It just It's just one extra step that makes things a little bit safer. The Caseline material is going to appear here, okay? Any of the materials that are based on the glue or fasteners are going to be part of the container. They're physically attached, hardwired to the container, so the materials will go up minutely for glue or adhesive or so on in this list. But the packing material right here is the Caseline itself. A way to double check if your numbers seem wrong is to go to the Details tab, Materials tab, and then look at the Caseline. It's going to show you, based on whatever your option you selected, how many you're going to use. The waste factor is based on the waste factor you've set in preferences for that category of material, or if you've modified it in the inventory for that material, it'll have a different waste factor. And you always remember, you can absolutely change it right here, okay, if for any reason you know you're going to use more. The plus waste will then be calculated. Then this shows you how much of a roll you're using, because the roll is my tracking level. Each one of these unit quantities is based on what your tracking level is for the material. So if this was a carton, that's what it would show. If it was a pallet, that's what it would show, okay? The weight, if it's less than a pound, in this particular case, it'll be a fraction of a pound. You can click on it if you really want to see that, okay, because it kind of rounds up. Then you have your cost. So if the number looks wrong, then this is what we need to address, okay? Any of these, I always suggest, until you become comfortable with setting your pricing and your selection of pricing, especially in packing other, that you go ahead and look at these costs right before you look at the Prices tab. If anything doesn't look right, make a note of it. Let's see if we can get that information and get that fixed for you, okay? I hope this helps.